2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, actually. Yeah. Okay. All right, call to order this Highland Park Board of Education hybrid workshop open meeting for Monday, September 23rd. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend a meeting for public bodies in which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of its meeting, setting forth time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger, and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns the meeting. We have a roll call.
Dr. Beatty,
Here.
Mrs. Sheldon, Dr. Coleman, Dr. Pigsley, Ms. Cruz,
Here.
Dr. Coleman, Ms. Daniel,
Here.
Ms. Vardaman,
Here.
Ms. Wortley.
Here. We are going to recess to executive session. Be it resolved pursuant to the Sunshine Act, NJSA 10:4-12 and 13. The Highland Park Board of Education will now meet in closed session to discuss matters related to a HIT hearing and HIT training for the Board of Education. These exemptions are permitted to be discussed in closed session in accordance with NJSA 10:4-13. Information regarding the board's closed session discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. So I move that we recess to executive session. Have a second? Second. All in favor?
They even got that.
We already inclusive. Yes.
By the way, I'm Mary's mom.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Let's see you. I'm concerned, helps Coach Mary's team sometimes. She's a celebrity guest. I was thinking earlier that the so that's 31. In that case.
Yes.
I motion to reconvene the regular session.
Second.
I use more in favor. Aye. Roll call.
Sorry, Dr. Beatty,
Here.
Sheldon, Dr. Coleman,
Here.
Dr. Pigsley, here, Ms. Cruz, here, Dr. Coleman, Ms. Daniel,
Here.
Ms. Vardaman,
Here.
Ms. Wortley.
Here. Thank you, Donna.
Dr. Schoolman's here, yes.
Oh,
Did he answer?
He raised his hand.
Oh, thank you. Maybe I can borrow.
It's a little slow.
yeah. We brought the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a message from Ethan. He said it's 1 a.m. in Spain and he just needs to be quiet.
All right, next thing on our agenda is the priorities of our new student representatives. So welcome.
Welcome. You're just gonna repeat after me. I do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
I do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
And I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under authority of the people.
I will bear the true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under authority of the people.
And I do affirm that I possess the qualifications prescribed by board policy for the office of member of a board of education.
And I do affirm that I possess the qualifications prescribed by the board policy for the office of member of the Board of Education.
And that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability.
And that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations and welcome to the board.
Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you on board and know that we're always looking to hear your input from your experiences in high school and how it relates to our experience. So looking forward to hearing. We're moving on the agenda, communications. We had 9 communications that came directly to the board. 4 of them were about our starting times at Barnwell. 3 of them were high school scheduling, with the high school scheduling issues. 1 was the bus schedule email, and 1 was about the use of AI in communicating with the high school related to AI tools being used for grading. We want to approval of minutes. We are going to be voting to approve our August 19th hybrid workshop and voting meeting. So I guess I move that we approve those minutes for the hybrid workshop voting meeting for April 19th. August 19th.
Sorry.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley, yes, Mrs. Cruz,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman.
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman is voting yes.
Yes. Well, Chris.
Thank you.
Ms. Daniel,
Yes.
Ms. Bardaman,
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees.
Yes.
We have student representative reports. They do. Oh, excellent.
Yes, we do. So, Irving has enjoyed welcoming their youngest learners back to school. The school year started with popsicles with Miss McNally and an open house for supply drop-off, followed by a school family meeting to introduce their whole school expectations, their monthly greeting technique, and to enjoy coming together as a school. Irving looks forward to a virtual author visit from Kelly Starling Lines on 9/26 and Dragon Chatter with Miss McNally on 10/2.
On September 3rd, Bartle had their back to school night. Students and their families came to meet their teachers for Bartle, engage in fun activities, and have popsicles with Miss Staff and Miss Boltzone. Bartle also had their first whole school meeting of the year on the 6th, where the whole school came together as a community to talk about the exciting things ahead for this year. The importance of following Bartle's expectations of being respectful, responsible, and kind. The first day for the middle school was a great success. The students were excited, and the staff was eager to meet their classes. They held first day assemblies with all classes to review expectations and discuss upcoming activities. Middle school had their back to school night on Wednesday, September 18th. The parents and guardians came to meet their children's teachers and to hear about the curriculum. Miss Brady and Mr. Payne met with the parents at the start of the night. The PTSO, the SCPAG, and the HPF also shared information about themselves and their involvement in the middle school. Parents, if you would like to be a part of the middle school parent advisory committee, please email Miss Brady directly. This group meets monthly to discuss what's going on in the middle school and plan for events. Laham Park Middle School Student Congress is now set for Spirit Fair until September 30th. All the information is linked to Miss Brady's outline.
The first 2 weeks of high school were bustling with activity. The high school administration hosted class meetings to set expectations for the year and also hosted the first activity club fair. On September 12th, the high school hosted their back to school night. The high school started with a presentation by Dr. Donovan welcoming the partnership between parents and guardians and the school. Our National Honor Society students then assisted as parents followed their student schedule and met with their teachers. This week, the halls are filled with flyers encouraging students to come to various club/activity interest meetings. This week, there will also be a boys soccer game at home on Thursday at 4, a volleyball game and girls soccer game home Friday at 4, and a football game Friday night at 7.
Thank you. Questions or amendments?
Well done in the first reports.
We're gonna move to our superintendent's reports. Good evening, everyone.
I don't, sorry.
You're gonna, okay? Yeah. All right, so there's no in rooms. Fill out all the yes, we're all supposed. All right, good evening. So I have 2 items to discuss. First, I want to thank everybody for a really great opening of the school year. I think one of the best, the superintendent. It was so incredibly positive. And one of the things I read ahead in the report given by our student reps, that was really awesome, was a lot of culture and climate, sort of setting, what are the expectations, we were building that together, how do we want the year to operate, super positive, coming off of professional development teachers back at the beginning of the year, for the first time ever, we had support and professional development for our lunch aides, and usually during unstructured time, especially at the elementary levels, where we have a lot of concerns, and not gonna will, I'm sure the schools would, but it's been a really great start to the year. There's activities for students that we set, a lot more structure to it, and so even out my window, it's just hustling and bustling with fun. And kids they have things to do, and there's a lot more structure to it. Our lunch aides have received a lot of professional development and help in that category, so we're off to a really great year, and I feel really, really positive. And like I shared with you all, our close students are really excited to welcome you back with a little treat. And that just highlights the amazing work that our students do, and that they're really committed to the community. And all of the fundraisers and activities that parents, caregivers, and staff of students, do really goes to a good cause for our students to have really great experiences. So I'm really excited that it's going to be a great year. And coming on the heels of that is our 5-year plan, and then some updates from some DOE data. So first, I want to talk about the SMCF data report. So I'll just briefly go through the slides. This was information I shared in the spring, but our student safety data system collects 2 types of information: and incidents of violence, vandalism, harassment, intimidation or bullying, weapon offenses, substance offenses, restraints, exclusions, and other incidents leading to removal. It also contains HIT trainings and programs. So what we do is we'll report all of that out to the DOE twice a year. So I did the reporting of our first round of information, if you remember, in the winter of last year. And so now is the reporting on the second set of that information, which will span the time from January 1 to June 30th. So just a reminder, when you look at the data, it's very general. So a single incident, something that I remind everybody on in terms of multiple offenses or one incident, that a single incident can consist of multiple incident types. For example, a student might make a criminal threat toward another student while holding a knife. This would be entered into the SSDS as a single incident of criminal threat and weapon use. So sometimes we see multiple things, there's multiple incidences in one infraction, so to speak. Also, there could be multiple offenders for multiple incidences. So that, theoretically could be one incident that had 60 students involved, and then our number would be 60. So just when you put it in perspective, sometimes the number seems high, and sometimes there's multiple students involved in those incidences. But the data doesn't parse it out so nuanced like that. So just a reminder, some commonly used definitions. If you see the word fight, that's a mutual engagement in a physical confrontation in which the offenders are understood that what they're going to do may result in bodily injury. Sometimes we see students that may look like they're going to fight or talk about fighting but don't, or there may be a little shoving. They do it more accidental. They don't really need to inflict bodily injury, so it's not really a fight. Assault, the person attempts to cause or purposely, knowingly, or recklessly causes bodily injury to another person. A physical restraint is the use of personal restriction that immobilizes or reduces the ability of students to move. So these we report are all of our staff
in particular situations are handled with care trained. So that there are very specific, so we talk about physical training, we're just not arbitrarily restraining children, but our students that do have to restrain a child done so with proper training. And a threat, simple or civil threat, with attempting by physical menace to put another in fear of bodily injury, then the offender knew that the threat could make the victim fearful. So that's typically like there's not a fight, but it's like there's a threat and somebody's actually concerned that they might be harmed. And then lastly, other incidences leading to removal would be any other incident not listed in the guidebook that takes place on or off school grounds that result in the disciplinary removal from at least 1/2 the day, that must be reported, so either 1/2 the day or multiple. And so we'll get down to some really specific, more like just general, I guess, examples of what we see that happen, but that would be, a student who curses a lot or uses foul language, and they're told multiple times to stop, or we put some restorative learning action or ways to support the student, and then they continue, and it's becoming offensive, and we give them a 1/2 day rise for restoration and work with the police center or something like that. That would be another incident leading to removal. So nothing first once, but maybe that it's a continual process that is now, causing harm or disruption in the classroom environment. And we give them, let's say, a rise, a 1/2 day of rise, that would be an incident leading to removal. Okay, so for the interim report period, like I said, for the January 1st to June 30th, there were 13 total incidents in the high school. Of those incidences, 6 were violence, 1 was vandalism, 5 were substantive. There were 24 incidences in the middle school, of them 11 were violence, 3 were vandalism, 7 were substances, 1 was weapons. At Bartle, of the 1 incident, it was violence, and no incidents across the board at Irving. And at the high school, there were 2 confirmed kids, and at the middle school, 2 confirmed kids. No confirmed kids at the second half of the year for Bartle and Irving. And just to parse out the violent instances, like I did last year at the high school, 4 of them were assaults and 2 of them were fights. And at the middle school, 5 of them were assaults and 6 were fights. At the high school, there were 22 other incidences leading to removal at the second half of the year. 6 total alleged hits, 0 restraints. For the second half of the year, they had 0 trainings completed for HIBs and 0 programs for HIBs. Again, this is the second half of the year. At the middle school, there are 78 other incidences leading to removals. 4 alleged HIBs, 0 restraints, 6 HIB trainings completed in the second half of the year, and 0 programs. At Bartle, there were 9 instances that were other leading to removal. 1 alleged HIB, 9 total restraints, 6 HIB trainings, and 14 HIB programs put in place in the second half of the year. And at Irving, 0 other incidences leading to removal, 0 alleged HIB, 6 restraints, 0 HIB trainings, and 0 HIB programs. So to compare period 1 versus period 2, meaning the first half of the year to the second half of the year, what I did was I put the first half of the year in red, so that you can see some of the difference in the incidences from the first half of the year to the second. So for high school, they had 14 for the first half of the year versus 13 the second half of the year. Middle school had 33 incidences total in the first half of the year, versus 24 in the second half. Bartle had 0 and then 1, and Irving had 0 and 0. And then again, comparison the first half of the year to the second half of the year. High school had 17 other incidences leading to removal in the first half of the year versus the 22 that I mentioned. Middle school had 32 in the first half of the year versus 78. And Bartle had 57 the first half of the year versus 9 in the second half of the year. And Irving had 8 the first half of the year, 0 the second half of the year. So you can see those numbers. You can also then go ahead and see too that there are opportunities for training, HIB trainings and HIB programs that are done. A lot of them are front-loaded beginning of the year. A lot of work at the elementary level on responsive classroom and conscious discipline. At the secondary level, we work on responsive advisory, and they use some other programmings like a diversity day and other programs with whole school assemblies and small group assemblies. Okay, and then move on. So speaking of that, because part of our strategic plan is culture and climate, so we always think of ways to increase culture and climate to obviously decrease the number of students that have to be removed from the classroom environment for any of those reasons. So I'd like to present the final version of our strategic plan. What I'm going to present today, I'm not going to go through all the bullets again, but what I'm going to do is talk about some of the updates or additions that are in bold or underlined. The draft was presented to the board and the community on July 22nd. Some public suggestions were made, and I want to just sort of address some of those as I go through the points. Because some of the comments that were made didn't necessarily either fall under a strategic plan purview or are probably not aligned to what the administration feels would be spoken of the whole community through that planning process. So I'll kind of walk through some of those. So just a reminder, our core goals that came out of the strategic plan process are in no order. So one of the suggestions was a graphic. So I think that was order, or not order of priority, but create a visual instead. So I put together a visual graphic that tried to have it as an encompassing and not any particular order. So a graphic to lead our charge, which is culture and climate, student achievement, facilities, and connecting resources, and improving communication. So our goal one is provide a safe, inclusive, identity affirming, and supportive educational environment that uses diversity as a strength. For goal two, connecting resources and improving communication, which is to connect families to schools by strengthening the coordination and accessibility of communications. Our third goal on student achievement is to increase academic rigor and excite and challenge students to learn in order to reach their individual potential. And goal four on facilities to create a long-term plan that addresses the safety and accessibility of district facilities that utilize an innovative approach and reflects community needs. So some of the things, like I said, I'll go through and just identify the ones that are bold. Those are some updates in language, but a couple of things first. There was a question or a comment made about potentially using other options other than technology for our benchmark assessment. And that did not make it as a goal. Part of it is we do offer hand written or hard paper assessment of assignments when appropriate or when we're able to. But some of our platforms that we use for benchmarking assessment are only available online, like Acadians. It's only available on the map. It's only available online, so we give it as an online resource. Part of the beauty of these resources is that they grade real quickly in real time, but they actually level. So what happens is the students will take the assessment, and then as they're taking the assessment, if they're not doing well, it will actually lower the level a little bit to make the assessment more accessible. And then that data comes back to us in real time so that we know that. So we know what kinds of questions they're answering, to what grade level they're answering them, and to what degree of proficiency they're answering them. And that's really important. That's something that in paper tests we couldn't tests we couldn't necessarily do. So that is why it's not included, although we do acknowledge the use of and need to make sure we differentiate our resources as well for benchmarking assessments. We want to be cognizant that we're using the best tools for our students. Created the visual. I included something about memory design, so I will get to that. And we added some more language. I think one of the other questions was preschool expansion as a goal. So I'm looking at those. I took notes at our July meeting as to what the suggestions were, and I went through. So the information about map redesign was added. About assemblies and conversations, so I went there and tweaked some of the language about assemblies for our culture and climate. We did include some language to make sure we were continuing to move forward on the accessibility for AP and honors, and something that is important to everybody. Preschool expansion is not in the strategic plan, because that is a board goal, not necessarily at this point an administrator goal, as much as I would love to say, hey, I want a building and I need money, and we are gonna have our front of it for me to make the final decision. But unfortunately, that's outside of my purview and my administrators and my leadership team's purview. So at this point, it is a board goal and really a community goal to decide how we want to move forward with preschool expansion. Plus, there's some financial responsibilities along with that. Once the decision is made on how we want to move forward with preschool expansion, then we take that on locally and put it into action. So that is why it's not a strategic plan goal, but you should totally see that as a board goal. We did put in some expansion on our partnerships with Rutgers, Middlesex, and more flexible learning pathways for students at the high school. And then you'll see on the a lot of the board agendas, we are doing a lot of professional development on our health and effects and curriculum. So that is information that's ongoing as well. So some visions. I know it's hard to see from the board perspective, but the presentation is in your board notes. So under culture and climate, the other thing that I added was to make sure that I highlighted most of the places where we were focusing on equity, because equity didn't come out of the strategic plan process as its own unique singular goal, like in our last strategic plan. It's still really. So what I did was I went through that were developed, and I pulled. So for 1.3, I just changed slightly the goal to say sure that are designed with an equity lens, providing with access to inclusive and global responsive content, programs should celebrate diversity, including LGBTQ+. For 1.4, I added for our right evaluation that it's analyzing its impact across different student demographics, including any disparities in access or outcomes, and making data-driven recommendations to enhance inclusivity and fairness in discipline practices. And in 1.5, this goal was to develop a data collection process for sort of practices being used to support discipline. And I added this includes segregating data by race, gender, socioeconomic status, and other relevant factors to identify disparities in the implementation of restorative practices. For 1.10, I adjusted it to say ensure that bullying prevention and conflict resolution presentations are inclusive and culturally responsive, addressing the diverse needs and experiences of our students. And 1.14, ensure that all updates to anti-bias regulations reflect a commitment to equity and prioritize the identification and removal of systemic barriers that may disproportionately impact underrepresented groups. Under connecting resources, on the next slide, please. Thank you. For 1.11, explore partnerships with post-secondary institutions to provide expanded opportunities for students. And then student achievement, thank you. Yeah, under student achievement, 312. Continue to collect internal data and use state testing data to monitor the academic gains of the students seeking 96+ to measure the efficacy of the program. 3.13 was added, use the AP potential reports to identify students in scheduling process who would be successful in an AP class who may not have been identified in other ways. And 3.14, continue collecting and analyzing data on the impact of the change in school government effects across the district. And for facilities, for 4.2, I adjusted access cluster needs by conducting a comprehensive analysis of student demographics and capacities, ensuring resources are distributed equitably. And then I underlined also that we're going to investigate accessibility of facilities to meet all needs of the students in the high school media metro. The full plan will be posted on the district website right now. What are our draft on it? Once it hopefully voted successfully tonight. It will be, I'll actually send it out as part of my weekly message this week. In addition, it will be on the website, it'll go on Facebook. In addition, you will be hearing from me shortly for a superintendent strategic plan council, in which I'd like to pull some small groups and just talk about updates along the way on how it's going, and then a mid-year report will come out, and an end-of-year report will come out in the past, so those will be your board presentations, and of course, ongoing communication about our strategic plan goals. As you can see, some of them just say ongoing, some of them are for this year, some are for next year. You know, so sometimes it's hard to predict funding or predict where we're going to land with some of them, and some of them should just be ongoing in general, so they don't really stop. So to put a timeline on it seems rather, you know, artificial, right? So, so like I said, we'll keep everybody updated. In fact, later in the fall, we'll have presentations from Ms. Asamoah on culture and climate, on some of the work that we're doing on anti-bullying work, we can respect and things like that. So you'll see a lot of that information coming soon. And for everyone that attended any of the strategic plan sessions, Board of Education, thank you again for your partnership and continued support.
Thank you. So we're gonna open up the board comments. Dr. Susan kind of just did two different sets of a lot of information. Just kind of organize it. Why don't we talk about the strategic plan first? That was what we just did, and then go back and talk about the SSDS, or if there are questions for that. That makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Probably should have stopped this question. Yeah. Whether it's strategic plan first or not, exactly what you said. So if anybody has questions or comments on those.
Yeah, I have one comment, something small, probably is covered, but in the goal number one, culture and climate, and this is probably would be added elsewhere too, but this is where I just like brought it up to me, is 1.5. Where it says race, gender, socioeconomic status, and other relevant factors that might be good to add ethnicities as well. And specifically speaking for the Latin community, who has many different races within their own cultures. So I don't know if that's included in relevant factors, or if you want to specify that.
I can certainly specify if it's, but it would be in part of it normally, but I can specify it.
I think that was one of my questions, about this, to me, that, other relevant factors phrase, which I know is meant to make sure that we're being inclusive of students who could be impacted. So of course, I was thinking about students with disabilities. So the list could go on, right? It could longer. Yes. But if you want to add that, something to think about, but I think we're all clear about, for the most part, which groups of students are going to be typically impacted. Okay, so then my other question is back to page 11, I believe it was, just on the, oh, I'm sorry, that's not strategic. The whole parts down there is, yeah, so strategic plan, so goal one, I was thinking about, I'm glad Dr. Suzuki talked about how we went through and try to apply more equity lens throughout the areas of the plan where it should be included. And what hit me was goal number one. We typically as district have always sort of led with equity in mind. And it's not necessarily referred to me in goal one, culture common. We talk about safe, inclusive, identity affirming, supportive, equitable. To me, it seems to kind of fall within that, should fall within that statement, but maybe I am.
Which state are you referring to?
Goal one, just, that's
Just like the goal and just like
the
that.
goal,
Yeah.
because you do actually mention it in objectives, I guess. But to me, that just seems to stand out as a perfect place to include equitable.
With the word equitable all once, please. That's what you're suggesting.
Yeah, we can't necessarily apply it, of course, there. Yeah. And then, sorry. Okay, so then I was just a little bit unclear. This is just a question, a couple questions I have about. I do again appreciate you going through adding this language. For 1.4, that's on slide 15. So there's a lot of emphasis on the RISE program and talking about discipline and how we approach it, but we also know that discipline is more than just the RISE program. So that's kind of where it looks to me like 1.4 is addressing RISE, but then the last part of 1.4 actually, and making data-driven recommendations to enhance inclusivity and fairness in disciplinary practices. Threw me off a little bit because I'm wondering, A, what do we mean by enhancing inclusivity in disciplinary practices? And B, we're talking more broadly about discipline beyond, rise, I'm a bit in that phrase. So it's, I guess it's a two-part question. First, what do we mean by inclusivity and discipline? And then again, if we're talking about discipline more broadly, should that be a separate goal, I guess? Because this one needs to lead with evaluating rise, like this is about evaluating rise, which we know is an alternative to our instant suspension, but that is not the entirety of kind of how we look at this in our district.
Yeah, so maybe we'll so maybe keeping rise in there as one, and then the disciplinary practice another, or potentially putting that down to 1.5, which is the restorative practices work, because that's really, you know, our look at
Right, yeah, I guess I still.
enhancing our practices there.
Right, it's 1.5 and ends with identifying disparities in the implementation of restorative practices, which again, I just want clarification on, because when we think about disparities, specifically through, well, the broader discipline, data, right? So where do we see those historic disparities in our discipline data? So
Right.
not just in rise, and we look again, I guess I have a question about that.
Okay.
Parse it out, I think we do.
Okay.
Because to me, it seems like there's some conflation of kind of rise and analyzing and evaluating that program, and generally speaking, this. And we have to be clear about sort of the importance of this community, whether it came across in the community meetings or not, but we know that our district has a lot of work to do around addressing these disparities. So I just want that.
Yeah, I can take that back to the leadership.
Well, yeah, what would be a suggestion, I guess?
The way to address it is to say, analyze data around disparities. In discipline, like that, monitoring discipline, and then another one is evaluating programs like restorative practices and rise. That are addressing, like if those two were bullets, like so that.
So we want, right,
It'd be a little.
one more 1 point, 1 point, down 1.7 on that, so you're thinking, or you?
No, actually, it's a rearranging of 1.4, 1.5, and one is.
Okay, yeah, no, I got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, and then, okay, 1.14, okay. 1.14, that's the page 17, okay. So here we're talking about ensuring all the updates to antibodies regulation to reflect activity, okay, great. And identification of global systemic barriers that make this portion happen. So are we to interpret this to mean or include the area of academic access? Let's talk about that. Okay. I think, I mean, I don't know, because it's lead with antibodies regulations, I guess that would be inferring. Okay.
I mean, we could change that language out to say that our comprehensive equity plan, which includes all those policies, maybe that's a little better language to use, okay?
Segment type bias.
Yeah.
Right, so our comprehensive
Because when
equity.
we think about it, it's nice to think about these things like.
Because the comprehensive equity plan includes all of like.
Exactly, that's more common.
Yeah,
Just want to make sure it's clear that that's, they're also.
yes,
interested in
yeah,
that.
I mean,
I think.
Mhm.
Anybody else on the strategic plan?
Then let's move, thank you for all the changes, and I guess we can talk about process on that. Strategic plan?
Yeah. Sorry. Because I just saw it here, the goal number 2, the connecting resources and improving communication, we have 1.2. Increase family participation at school events through hosting family engagement nights. Maybe this is part of it, maybe it's not, but a lot of the times that engagement is slow because they have a childcare issue. So some things have been parents only, and even though technically, like, if they show up with their kids, they're not going to turn away, the parents will just not go. And it creates
inaccessibility to single parents or parents who don't want to be there. So I don't know how we would word something like that, but, well, I would leave that to the building administrators, or, you know, or district administrators when they do events. You know, typically they do, like, when we had planning events, I had, childcare provided. So a lot of times you'll see that they have childcare provided. Oftentimes we don't, just because no one wants to get paid to do it at night, so we try our best, and then, or we'll try to get some high school students to go, let us help us, we try. We try.
NHS.
Yeah, they said that, but we do try that actually, most recently, a lot of the great work that especially didn't know how to run a lot of their family engagement nights and caregiver engagement nights have been really successful by giving out free things. So that's been like really great. We've worked with Epic and locally Hartle and through Fast Grants with the NJEA to get free resources like books. So if it's a literacy engagement night, every caregiver gets to go home with free books. If it's a math engagement or STEM, like maybe some free dice or cards or something like that, just so that they have free stuff to use at home, and that's been really successful. So I would, you know, the idea is their general goal would be, you know, every group is going to be different, every event is going to be different. So we try to, so ways that we can increase it, you know, obviously would include potentially giving out free stuff or having babysitting or having free food or things like that.
I think that is babysitting is something that is, or childcare is something that is a high priority, if it is at all feasible to just create a standard to make it for the sake of accessibility.
So we definitely do, it should be, if it's not, I would contact, if you know there's that happening and you know, have no information on childcare, just reach out right back to the administrator saying, you know, are you familiar or are you aware of any childcare that's happening for that, because most of them are really good about it. It could just be maybe a lack of communication, you know, from local to communication, I don't know, but typically they're really good about it, but like I said, if there's any concerns about that, reach out directly to whoever's hosting the event and they can communicate that back.
So before we move to the SDS report, a question on process for the strategic plan, where the intent was to vote on it tonight. Be comfortable voting on it with Dr. Suka adding these changes that we talked about, or do we put it off to October?
Yeah, I mean, I trust it, but I love this conversation here.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that was my thought. I'll make sure I'm comfortable with that, when we get back, when we get back, we're getting to.
Okay, well, speak to that.
All right,
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Half of my revisions, but I think a lot of something. Thank you.
I have questions on the SSDS report. Please tell me this.
I have one. So 5-9, where we look at instant data, but specifically I'm thinking about column restraints. And I know the purpose of this report is that now I'm just wondering into which these restraints are impacted students' facilities, what the demographic breakdown there. And it's definitely obviously that would have to follow up.
Yeah.
Question, I think it's just important for us to have an understanding of that. And then also programs completed, just to be clear, programs completed are generally going to be whole school, right? The bigger programs, whole school.
Or smaller group.
Small group.
Oh,
Okay,
small,
not
yeah.
one. Small.
No, so that would either be small group or large group, that's not like the one-on-one counseling, right? That's not counted there.
Right, and then these programs are not necessarily specifically for kid prevention or awareness, but for the, yeah, general.
Some of them are, but some of them are also required.
Yeah, I just want to be sure, when I saw kid, and then I think I saw somewhere kid programs. Yeah. No, that's. Okay.
Programs online.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, this is how they push out the data through the SSDS, so that would be, because they actually, the way they have it set up, so if you know anything about the daily reporting systems, they're a little convoluted, so parsing it out and trying to make sure I had everything correctly, so that's why it's probably not as clean. From a reading perspective.
And while we're on this slide, I have a question here, about
Bartle, because that is a massive difference in the first semester versus the second semester on incidents leading to removal. Do we have any kind of explanation for such a, because it doesn't look like it's violence, from the other, that's just a really shocking change.
I mean, honestly, if I could probably speak to it, I think it was honestly having the second administrator in the building that helped the culture and climate and the work with the school leadership team on, tiering interventions and really empower back on the teachers to handle a lot of the issues locally. So one of the things that Ms. Baldwin was really well, so if there's a call to the office, instead of going in and sort of dealing with it, what she does is she'll go into the room and allows the teacher to leave the room to have a conversation with the student, and then she is the adult in the classroom. She can't be a classroom unattended. So what she'll do is she'll step in and the teacher leaves to have a conversation with the student. She can manage, manage the classroom. That way it's not shifting the power. So that because if you send a kid to a student that's having a minor infraction to the office all the time, or calling the assistant principal all the time and have the person come in, that was like, well, what kind of power do you have as a teacher over my behavior? So that was a lot of the work she did. Last year was her first year. So it was really trying to change a culture and shift a culture there. And now I can't confirm that, but that is, my hunch, considering we've been looking at the data, actually in academic excellence in terms of the discipline data that's been coming out of Bartle. And it's the number of incidences have dramatically declined in general. And even more so, I know I've been looking at some of the data on cell phone use. And I was like, wait, last year only two? Two, that's it. And then I asked Brooke at a recent assistant principal meeting, I said, well, do you have other things that the teachers are reporting that they're just not getting to your level? She's like, actually, no. She's like, things are going really well at Bartle. Like they're in a group, they're feeling empowered to handle things locally, engagement's high, because now, if anybody is familiar with Ms. Now's leadership, she's a very strong instructional leader. So now she's getting in and doing a lot more coaching in the classrooms and informal walkthroughs and things like that. So I think that there's more of this sense of empowerment for the teachers and engagement and differentiated activities and things like that. So I think they're finally coming out of COVID and back into a really good place. So my hunch is that number is really indicative that things really settled in and people felt empowered. So we didn't have to remove students from their setting as much as maybe at the beginning of the year.
And so I guess similarly, like in the middle school, you have those sort of opposite situation going on.
Yeah.
Where things, and just when you see discrepancies like that, it's, especially moving in the other direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the middle school definitely was, I didn't parse it out, but we had, just anything that could be, things like, pushing without intent of injury. And maybe like having done it like multiple times, so there's no way for this like sort of fear factor type of thing. So like I went through and that was some of them. So they, at some point after a number of times received, a half a day of rise, and it was a couple of students doing that. So, again, that number is, don't think about necessarily like 78 potentially different separate things they could potentially be, where if you have 5 students doing something, that counts as 5. So it doesn't count as 1. So I didn't parse it out, individually, but again, maybe some of the issues that we see in middle school, as we talk about in the executive session, sometimes middle school could just be a really rough couple years for students, but it's definitely something when we meet as assistant principals once a month, talking about some of these best practices and what we're seeing. And now that we're seeing a lot of the great fruits of that labor at Bartle, is how do we scale that up to the middle school now? How do we do maybe something similar? That way the students also have that continuity and expectation as they go from building to building. So that's what our plan is this year. But I'm not sure this is going to be as good as that's what we don't like.
Along those lines, I think it's gonna be interesting, I think, to see how this report looks like in part of this fall, right? So another way to interpret this is is, I try, it's just
Yeah, I-
it's like trains seem to be working in the fall, and then they, right? Or the kind of difference in leadership, so it's gonna be interesting, I think, in the fall, it's gonna be numbers of like, different one flow, like spring, or, in Oregon. Just to be clear, so the total incidence of middle school in period is 24, but then the other incidents, 78, probably because of multiple students involved, right? So the total number of incidents actually went down, but there were more students involved, which is why that number.
Well, the total incidence is, no, the total incidence is referring to violence, vandalism, and substance of weapons.
That's one
That's only one category.
Okay,
So yes, good, goes down, it's great.
yeah. I think, okay, so I wasn't sure if I was.
Yeah.
It's all numbers like a category.
Yeah, it's all other-
It's not a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I still think the other concerns of the school around the fire.
Yeah.
Right, it did go down in fact that happened, so a lot of time. But we've heard that from people, from parents in the community and data, so I think that's also a concern. And then we don't see those other incidents really go out of the spring, even those items, it's like. Yeah, middle school is hard, but we also want to provide the safer environments.
one of the other things that we just discovered too was that, the middle school, so we had some disparity of reporting between the middle and the high school, and that is for incidents that happen off-site. Or on the weekends or at night, so if they're here, you know, you can have the school at night, or whatever, event, but whatever, if the kids are hanging out, or if they're at the party, or something happens. Now, if it's a situation of a HIM, or anything that can impact the students during the day, if they come back to school, that's something that's on the school radar that we address. But one of the disparities we found that when there was an incident where two kids got into a fight on a Saturday night, a Friday, apparently the middle school was reporting it and having disciplinary infractions for the students. The high school was not. Legally, we don't have to. What we do address through either situation in all buildings is making sure that if students are coming back together after maybe having a fight off premise, is that we work on the restoration or the harm or whatever it is, because we don't want to bring that into the school. So how do we address that? So sometimes we are notified that these issues happen on the weekends or at night. And so that could be another issue too, where the middle school was taking it on to say, okay, if it's happening, we should also discipline kids. And or give, you know, a logical consequence, and high school is not. So that might be an issue too, because legal, I guess technically, we don't have to. So that's sort of like a philosophical thing, if something happens off-site with our students, are we responsible for addressing it or not? And we do in terms of the restorative piece and the cultural climate thing, but you know, are we the ones that are disciplining and reporting it as a disciplinary infraction? So that may also be part of it, I don't know, but just something came up on my radar today.
Yeah, I would hope that we look into that because
Yeah.
we've had problems with improper reporting, especially from the middle school. And if we're not, and so like if we're differentiating and how we're reporting things to the state, that's really concerning.
Yes, so that literally came on my radar today, so we are addressing it and working through that to make sure that all our buildings are on the same page with that collectively.
This may be a simple question, but since we're not legally responsible for doing it, can we still offer those services but not report it in this way?
Well, so we can't offer rise,
Right.
because that's our in-school suspension model, we have to in-school suspend a child for that, to offer particular rise programs, but we can offer, as long as a student agrees, we can offer restorative practices, or both parties agree, we can offer kid center support and teen center as long as the parent consent agrees. So mental health support has to be parental consent, restorative practices has to be student consent.
And that's not.
That wouldn't be an incident. So if you and I had a problem outside of school and the principal got word and, you know, whatever our peak was, and then we came in, the principal could say, you know, Jerry, Christina, would you like to, you know, I think, let's talk about this, do you want to sit and have a conversation, or we would pull someone and we could work it out. But if we're removed from our instructional program or something, we have to report it. So that's what an incident needing to remove is that we're removing a student from their instructional program for something else.
Where we sort of get lunch.
We could have lunch, we could have lunch restoration, we have after school, we have, you know.
So I think it's great that I'm considering it, hearing about this happening in there, and sort of like it is unfortunate. We're going to spray off.
Yeah.
So I guess my question would be then, is there, have you reached a decision as to what the continuity is going to look like?
So hopefully I'll see tomorrow, this little, and looking more, I didn't even realize the picture, but I came on to my late this afternoon. I was like, oh, well, that is interesting, we're going to pull and come up with it, so right now, the emails are probably flying and we're not now. Resonate right now, but tomorrow we will revisit that conversation and make that determination, as soon as possible.
And I was also just thinking that there was mentioning opportunities for kind of addressing these off-site interactions that are still over in the school day without necessarily reporting it. Discipline assistant would be through advising. Is that an opportunity to have these kind of side discussions or no?
I guess that depends because the students might need different advisory. So that I'm not sure, I'm not sure about the very specific implementation of that at the middle or high school levels to know if there's, I don't know the lessons intimately to.
I think I recall we were talking about in economics, talking about some of the things that happened in my street. There was this kind of, maybe for the middle school, I'm not sure, the discussion around how they are able to address some issues that come up, right? And we talk about that organic nature of having that kind of, it's not just solid through, it's the students can share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For period one, it says agent alleged to be from city. Seems
Which school?
between that and that was our high school.
Okay, I can look into that.
So it's like 10 to
First.
Yeah, I copied everything exactly as it is, so I have to look into that and see what the issue was. Yeah. We're gonna move on to the other questions. We're actually gonna move.
The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board Policy 0167 establishes a the public session of the evening. We'll have one more after board reports and agendas and before we vote. So how many people do we have online? 11, okay. And any raised hands? If you want to speak, please raise your hand and we'll call on you, or Angela will. No raised hands? Okay. Then we are going to move on. There'll be another opportunity if someone does want to speak before we vote. So we're going to go to board committee reports. Curriculum and instruction. Did Allison share that? Somebody? report,
Yeah,
Allison?
I will be reporting for Allison tonight.
Thank you.
But Dan and Jen, keep me honest here if I miss anything.
Okay.
So
Just talk
Can you hear-
talking to the
can-
mics.
can you hear me okay? Yes, hopefully. All right. So we had a great meeting September 12th. We first started with going through the benchmark data, which, there was more of a robust discussion on the Acadians data that now we collected for the first time last year. And so we had initial discussions on, how we might want to break that down and some different trends. For example, a conversation around foundations and that it hadn't been consistently used. And some teachers thought that maybe those that was consistently used, that they fared a little better. So thinking about that, we also had a discussion around even just tracking things like preschool, and down the line, we'll be able to see what kind of what their proficiency data looks like down the line, and kind of having that discussion on how we can use this as a tool to see, what we're implementing and how it's working. In general, another conversation that we had was a higher level discussion on just all the testing and how difficult map testing in general, I think, is a little exhausting for folks. There was a dialogue around what can we do, and the discussion was, well, Ms. Rodriguez had looked into this, but in general, these kind of tests do tend to be a little bit more exhausting. And so, there was a discussion around Bartle, how they split those assessments to try to make it a little bit easier for them. And, we'll continue to look into other options, but certainly these kind of conversations and being able to have these conversations and tracking different assessments over time and kind of getting real live feedback on how it's going. We all kind of saw value in that. One of the conversations around specifically with the ELA, how it's being used for any students that are well below the average or approaching the standard, they actually use that Acadian's data and MAP testing. So we have both of those proficiency sets of data to kind of do a deeper assessment in K through. One of the questions we had was, well, did you see any trends when you think about ELA and maybe where there's areas that we might want to do a deeper dive? Maybe we're not getting to proficiency and we want to kind of consider that. There was a conversation around specifically K through 3, more fluency coming up as kind of a discussion point, and automaticity. So that was a more robust conversation on how we're going to track that, and then also be able to support students in a more targeted way when they're kind of identified in those areas. Let's see here. Writing also came up as a really big focus as an area where we're going to have to kind of focus in a little bit more and really try to track that and use these new benchmarks and tools to see how that's going. For math, there was a discussion around these standardized assessments, and this is the first time we've kind of used our not, locally grown ones that we're using. Overall, the data, Irving data was pretty strong. What we saw was 4th and 5th will be an area of focus. Specifically, there was a discussion around, I'm trying to see what there it is. The 7th and 8th grade math, there was a robust conversation there and some areas where it looked like we needed to do some, deeper dives and the levels of proficiency were not kind of hitting what we might want. There's some consultation support being offered specifically when you're thinking about how to kind of intervene or with integrity and adapt material to kind of suit the students' needs. And so we're consulting with Jana Lee on that to kind of take this information and take action upon it. That's the benchmark piece. Am I missing anything there? Yeah, pretty okay. Pretty okay. And the nice conversation we had was it was an initial peak of this, and then the idea is kind of where we might want to dive deeper and how we might want to have this conversation more publicly. For the curriculum revision updates, very much underway. The ELA changes to the state requirements are a little bit more robust, so that's a heftier lift is being done now. And I think we'll be prepared to have those conversations next time on kind of what all of that is going to look like and how that's going to materialize for our curriculum. And then there was a conversation around the policies. This was a lighter conversation, one around service animals, and there was a discussion around I believe it was the insurance around that. And so there's no longer therapy animals allowed. And emotional support pets, and there's reasons for that. And then there is a policy change around student suicide prevention, and this is specifically providing more robust support for students with disabilities and making sure that training is provided for all staff. And there was a robust conversation around the new clinicians that we have access to support students in crisis, which seemed like a really positive new resource that we have through Rutgers Behavioral Health. So that's the report from the session. Is there anything you'd want to add to that before I go through what's on the agenda? No. Okay. This is my first time doing a report.
You're doing great.
You're
doing great.
Thank you. Okay, so we have an approval of field trip requests. So a series of approvals for things we've discussed also today. The approval of the 2024-29 strategic plan, approval for the 24-25 mentoring plan, approval for the 24-25 professional development plan, We've got an agreement with Rutgers University for their undergraduate psychology internship placement, a memorandum of understanding with Rutgers University Graduate Student of Education. We've got approval of 3 home instruction students, approval of university graduate students for teaching internships, junior practicum observations. There's a list there of names. And then we've got approval of professional development. These are all no cost to the district. So A through C were more around physical education. And then one specifically for the pilot program for high school students who will collaborate with the teen centers to implement the curriculum to address chronic absenteeism. So that is all I have.
Thank you.
All right.
Questions for curriculum and instruction? The board. Okay, equity and excellence. You're up.
Yes, we actually have met twice since our last board meeting, so I
boy.
had to go back to that August meeting notes to refresh myself. Yes, August 22nd we met. And we haven't had a board meeting since then. Okay, just making sure I'm right. Well, welcome back to the regular school year board meetings. So the August meeting, and many of these topics that we discussed were actually followed up in our September meeting. So some of these notes I can sort of get through quicker because there's follow-up to come. The first topic discussed was the 2023-24 school year in review discipline data, demographic data that is, that Dr. Dr. Suska presented. Not reflective of ISS or OSS incidents, but we looked at the breakdown of discipline data, other discipline data by subgroup. And one of the highlights there that we all took away right away was that the incidents involving students who were classified as low socioeconomic status were the highest group impacted, or group reflected, I should say, in the data, followed by students with disabilities. And we talked about the importance of comparing incidents to student populations and breaking down SES, socioeconomic status, and special education status by racial groups, which is going to be followed up, or was followed up, I should say, in our September meeting, and will be followed up in my notes. And so we talked about this sort of across the board for high school and middle school as well. Let's see. We talked about the importance of, it's great that we are looking at this data, but also keeping in mind that we are looking at the data for a reason, and that is to address disparities when we see them and other issues in the data. So we really, as a committee, just talked about that process of why we're doing this and the importance of keeping that in mind. So that just doesn't become a practice without any sort of systemic approach to addressing it. So in terms of the total number of incidents, there were 1,250 incidents in 2022-23. Oh, I'm sorry, did I misstate the years? Okay, so I have a chart here for 2023-2024, but you presented both 2022 and 2023, Dr. Suska, for comparison purposes. See, that was just so long ago. So thank you. So 2022 to 2023, 1,250 incidents total, and then we noticed a significant drop to 351 incidents. That's why it was important to get that historical perspective in 2023-2024. So a huge drop. And that breakdown, 280 of the 351 incidents were managed in the classroom and 92 by the office. Let's see, of the 92, at that time, we were waiting on how that's broken down by subgroups. The next topic we discussed was the work around the RISE program evaluation at that time. The initial stages of the process were being completed. We are now past that stage, and the evaluation has been completed. So I will follow up with that when I present the next meeting notes. We also looked at code of conduct change requests by the administrators in each schools. And we talked about this in a past committee meeting, and here in one of our reports, we just talked about administration noticing a need to update their code of conduct to reflect kind of new issues or behaviors they're seeing since coming out of COVID. And also from Irving's perspective, making the code of conduct language and format and approach more developmentally sort of appropriate in terms of, again, language and framework there. So that work was highly recommended and led through by the administration. And what I believe at that point came out of that discussion was also the importance of having a format that would be somewhat consistent, I think, across all buildings. We discussed the need for clarification on specific behaviors, specifically one of the behaviors that we noticed that were reflected in the old code of conduct was that there were certain categories for behaviors that impacted substitute teachers. And we were just curious as to whether or not, or why that sort of differentiation was included in the code of conduct. We also talked about just the interpretive nature of some of the, obviously some of the behaviors, and so the importance of, again, just being specific in terms of what the student behavior is or was that would initiate a specific code of conduct violation. So that is that. Let's see. Then we talked about the comprehensive equity plan. Again, just to be mindful of the fact that we are supposed to be reviewing this, our comprehensive equity plan every year. The link to the document is in the notes here. We talked about the policies that could be reviewed again, since many of them are some 20 years old, policies, of course, that would be relevant to our comprehensive equity plan. So we talked about, again, reviewing those policies. It would also be good for us to review each area and assess where we are implementing and where we need to make improvements. And that is the whole goal of the comprehensive equity plan. Let's see. And then we talked about anti-bullying, LGBTQ plus training or programming. And I think this was just included in the agenda because there were some concerns raised by multiple community members. And I know Dr. Suska and administration has been having conversation with concerned community members and will continue to keep us informed as to how that is being addressed. And then we talked about our special education program audit request from CPAG. During that conversation, Dr. Suska pointed out that the state, has identified that we are over-identifying students around specific disability areas. And as a result, they are requiring an action plan to assess these areas of over-identification. Our systems were reviewed by an auditor, Comenyo maybe Institute. I'm not sure about the pronunciation, but they have reviewed our special education programs, and we have revised our response to intervention systems and other programs that would be relevant to this topic to address, this issue. There is still a disconnect between sort of the referral process and special education classification. And again, these are all issues that are being addressed as a part of the audit. Okay. We also talked about the importance of having the demographic breakdown, racial, gender, and SES by classification, which we knew was a big request, but we felt it was important to have that data broken down. Okay, so that's it for August. Close that out. And then we met most recently, our last meeting was on September 19th. Were there any questions about that meeting? Actually, maybe I should pause. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. So we met on the 19th, and our first topic was following up on our special education demographic data questions from the previous meeting. And Dr. Suska put together the breakdown of the special education demographic data as of July of 2024. At that time, there were 25 students that were in the referral process, so not yet included in the special education demographic data that was presented. 323 students were currently receiving special education services as of July, and that's about 21% of our district population. The demographic breakdown as per Genesis is as follows: 109 female and 214 male. 57% of the 323 students are classified as low socioeconomic status. 177 students are classified as white, and 146 are classified as minority students defined by the DOE report card. For students of color, which includes American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Hispanic/Latino, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander, and 2 or more races. Those are the DOE racial student groups. And then further breaking those numbers down, I know this is a lot. 8 American Indian or Alaska Native, 17 Asian, 3 Asian/white, 67 Black or African American, 24 Black or African American / Asian/white, so that's 2 or more races, 3 Black or African American white / American Indian or Alaskan Native, and 11 Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. So those numbers were the breakdown of the 146, I believe. I'm just looking at all these numbers. I'm sorry, that was probably really hard to follow. But we have it here in the report. So a couple of the takeaways, this is the most important part. I think some of it is quite glaring probably, and that is again, identifying many students from our who are identified as low socioeconomic status as being overrepresented in the numbers, as well as we question that there seemed to be a high number of white students reflected in the data as well. We also had to make the observation that the number of male students compared to female students was clearly double, I believe, double amount of male students to female students, which is not atypical with special education data. We requested data on that the Hispanic/Latino student group be clarified. Specifically, are there actually no Hispanic/Latino students receiving special education services? We all had a hard time believing that. So again, that was another key discussion point for us from the data. So we figured, since it's very unlikely that no Hispanic or Latino students are receiving special education services throughout our entire district, it's likely that those students are included in the number of students who are classified as white by the DOE data collection, or I should say breakdown. So again, we understand that Latino/Hispanic is not a race, it's an ethnicity, but the way the data is reported for the DOE are classified, it's a racial category. So we are waiting to get a further breakdown or clarification on that data point. Okay, let's see. We also talked about, code of conduct change requests coming soon. Dr. Suska just gave us an update there that the Irving Code of Conduct changes have been made to reflect a more developmentally appropriate practice. They have upcoming parent and student advisory meetings before our meeting in October, and they will be recruiting from monthly parent advisory meetings and offering morning and evening meetings with Zoom options to just further engage, hopefully more parents and families that represent a diverse range of our population of students and families. And the idea here is to just include more student voice and involvement in the process of talking about their code of conduct. So the student input sessions will occur during middle school and high school advisory meetings, and the Bartle input sessions will occur through morning meetings. Okay. So the RISE program evaluation report, the evaluation has been completed. The report was presented to the committee and is linked here in the notes. At the time of the meeting, the committee did not have a chance to review, so we did not get into a discussion of the evaluation. That'll be at our next meeting. But Dr. Suska did brief us that she met with Dr. Heine. They had an initial discussion anyway of the evaluation report. They will prepare a joint presentation at our 10/28 board meeting to present the findings of the evaluation. And in the meantime, building administrators will be meeting to review the report and talk about their building level takeaways. Dr. Suska is also scheduled to meet with Dr. Ann Gregory, our local Rutgers professor and expert in the area of restorative practices, who has consulted with the district in the past around our discipline revisions that we have been making over the years, and certainly the inclusion of restorative practices. So we are happy to hear as a committee that Ann Gregory will be back and has offered her services to support Dr. Suska in going through the report findings and considering the recommendations with that lens of experience that Dr. Gregory brings to the table. Okay, and I think that's it. Well, we did touch on, again, the special education program evaluation, we're going to call it, not really an audit, but Dr. Suska has been looking around looking around, she has reached out to her colleagues in the state for evaluator recommendations, and you did have 2 groups come to you highly recommended. So we have received a proposal from one group, the Comegno Institute, and I think at that time we were waiting for one more proposal from Machado Law Group. So one of the points that Dr. Suska made in talking about this search for an evaluation of our special education program and finding an evaluator that would be a good fit for such a search, she talked about the importance of determining the background of the evaluator and to make sure that that background matched with the purpose of the evaluation. So the district's goal here is not necessarily to review the program's administrative responsibilities. That would probably entail hiring an evaluator who is a retired superintendent. Our goal more so is to focus on kind of legal issues related to the program, budgeting, access, programming, more comprehensive programmatic evaluation data. So in that case, Dr. Suska is looking more so at a special education attorney or group that could carry out this evaluation. So we are excited to hear that that process is in its initial stages, and we will look forward to continued updates. Part of that discussion I should point out is that we talked about the process will include the evaluation process will definitely include stakeholder input across multiple groups, and that includes focus groups and special interest group input. Administration will also be welcoming specific questions that CPAG would like to see addressed in the evaluation as well, as an active parent organization that advocates on behalf of all students with disabilities. So we had that conversation as well. And then we have our lovely policies that were already discussed, service animals, suicide prevention, not so lovely, but a good thing we need, and volunteer athletic coaches and co-curricular activity advisors, assistants. No major changes in terms of language, in terms of substance. So just do our part in pushing those along. That is it. Sorry, so long-winded. Any questions?
Can I ask a quick one for process for the program evaluation? How many estimate, do you have a number in mind? Is there 2 to 3 and what's the timeline for that for decisions? Is it just when we get proposals back? I'm just.
Yeah, I guess as I get proposals, so same thing that I did for the RISE program evaluation, I reached out to a couple of people, waited for the proposals, and then brought them forth to review. So I would do the same thing for this one. It's been 3 weeks and I haven't gotten a couple of the proposals, so I can only put forward what I get as well. So I talk to a lot of people, and if they present proposals, they present proposals. If they don't either. So I'm trying to give people grace and know that they have a lot to do. But I also know that some of these people do this often, so sometimes things are boilerplate that they could just tweak to what we need as well. So I will follow up and make sure that we can get as many as possible.
Anything else for equity and excellence? Okay, we're gonna move on to finance and facilities, and that's me. So we met on August 17th. There was Dr. Suska and Mr. Rosa, John Flanagan, Colin McIntosh, and then Ann, Nikki, Ethan on virtual from his hideaway there, and myself. Colin reported that we had, at that point, we had 228 students in our aftercare program, before and after care, compared to 191 last year at this time. So a nice increase. We are approved for state licensing. At that point, it was pending water testing results. We've since gotten those. Background checks have been completed. He's been meeting, or at least met on September 16th with a parent focus group. I think he's planning on having other such groups. Comments were mostly related to snacks, and kosher options are going to be added. One of the comments from some parent focus group. Also, he's going to be, parents will be given the opportunity to visit our aftercare by signing up. Like twice a month, there'll be an opportunity to have a visit through our site managers as a way to let parents see the program. And that follows both our district policy. I actually looked it up. It's policy 9150 is on parent visitations to our buildings, and also we're a school age childcare program, and it matches that guidelines with our district policy, kind of being the guiding policy there. He has a sixth grade program up and running. There are 8 students enrolled, 4 attending regularly. He felt it was going well. Those students are having more choice on their activities. They've been cooking, watching a Highland Park sporting events when they're available. So overall, he felt things were going very well. Then we moved on to facilities. John reported out on the summer projects, which you had linked to in the agenda. Almost all of the summer facilities projects, that particularly those funded by ESSER money, are complete. And thank you to John and Denise for staying on top of those multiple projects, getting almost all that money spent. It'll be an agenda item, which we'll get to in a minute. Preschool playground construction should be starting. At that point, I said next week. They're fencing off. I actually drove by today and I saw they had fenced off Irving. I picked up over there today. They're fencing off the area so students can still utilize the part that's not being leveled while we wait for the equipment to arrive, I believe. Baseball renovation. The renovation of the baseball field has begun, and that an engineer has been hired, soil erosion permits applied for, so forth. So that project is starting. There's going to be a meeting for all stakeholders related to our high school greenhouse. So that project also is in its very beginning stages. But that's going on. John talked about our HVAC systems, a lot of leaking, and he's addressing those issues, which are related also to roof leaks, I believe. The results of the lead water test showed 2 faucets in Irving of concern. They've been removed, and they were not faucets that were used by children to drink, I believe, but still in all, they've been removed. Bartle restroom. They've met with architects to begin a complete renovation of one of the boys' restrooms. They're meeting with architects for designs, make sure it'll be fully ADA compliant. The renovation of the one bathroom is in our current budget. We also discussed the Bartle walkway and the options for funding this very large expense, and obviously unanticipated. Which you saw on the agenda for our meeting, we're looking at replacing in kind. Replacing it as it was would cost $2,900,000. To eliminate that area, eliminate the walkway, the door, and the stairwell would be $1,944,000. Denise had gone forward and looked at an analysis of our capital reserve. And my understanding is that if we were to fund on our own, just the second of those, a lesser cost, it would basically eliminate our capital reserves, and we would not at that point be able to move forward. If we've applied for 2 preschool construction grants, if we were awarded them, we need our share of that money, and that we wouldn't have our share at that point. So obviously it's a very major concern. And we're looking at other options for with how to pay for those repairs. More to come on that. And then we reviewed, let's see, finance. Was there anything? Oh, we went to the agenda items, which is under finance. And actually, this is all, I'm going to cover that when I go over the agenda items. So let me do that right now. I think I covered anything for the minutes that was other than the agenda items. So if we move to the agenda items, we have, so the one is the bill list from August 20th to September 23rd. This number 2 is what I was talking about in terms of the ARP ESSER funds. So we have the funds that we can pay for by September 30th, but we need to have it all done by October 18th. So we're voting to process those additional bills because it all has to be done and submitted by October 18th. We have approval of the treasurer's report through July 31st. Also the board secretary report through July 31st. That one that indicates that we haven't overextended our any budgetary line item. We have the Board of Education certifications. These I always have trouble with what they are actually. And same thing, sufficient funds are available to meet the district's financial obligations through the remainder of the year. Budget transfers was number 6, travel and related expense reimbursements. We have some donations, actually 8, 9, and 10 are donations. 8 are the donations that came through Highland Park Conservative Temple and Congregation Anshe Emet for school supplies for our children at the beginning of the school year. Also, we accepted the donation of storage containers for our before and after school program, and money that was given in memory of the O'Keefe Memorial Gift Fund, and that donation went to the Middle School Globe program. An additional donation here towards our baseball field, $5,200. We have approval of one additional out-of-district placement. That's to the FedCap school. We have contractors for after-school National Inventors Hall, an assembly at the high school about breaking the cycle of violence, nurse transport, an agency for nurse transport support. We have contractors for lots of professional development. Well, we have one there, I'm sorry, the core math training. That's number 14. 15 is some pass-through funds that we're required to do for Yeshiva Sharet Zion Girls School, and these are all technology requests, technology purchases. We are approving we're voting on out-of-district tuition contract for a student to attend Franklin. That's under the Kenny Vento program. We have an addendum to Jana Lee Consulting as our last, that's number 17 under our agenda items. And that's finance facilities, so that's equity. Any questions? And then
I have two small questions.
Go ahead.
The sixth grade after school program, you said one of the activities they're doing is cooking. I was just curious about that. Is that happening in like a kitchen here? Like
I
one of the
guess
old
so.
kitchens or
Yeah.
something?
I don't know.
Yes, so there is, we used to have a home ec program.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
that's
there is a room that is in the corridor that attaches the middle and the high school. So they are going in there and they were really excited. So they were making English muffin pizzas and things like that. So the middle school students were asked what they enjoy to do. And they told Miss Gerlach and Mr. Joe that they'd really love to cook. So Mr. Joe and Miss Gerlach have been buying supplies and teaching them how to cook and cook some meals. And they've also been loving to attend the sporting events, volleyball. So now we were thinking about getting them the pom-poms or some apparel to root on the students. So it's basically what they want to do. And Miss Gerlach and Mr. Joe have been amazing.
And then one more question I just had about the baseball field. I see work is starting. Did the engineer say anything about chances of it happening this year in time for the spring season? Is that still a possibility?
I don't know. We're waiting for the soil erosion permits.
Okay,
And
okay.
tests. So that's what the donation was for, is to cover that part of the thing. So that takes 30 to 45 days to get back in return.
Okay. Keep my fingers crossed.
Anything else? Okay, Jen, you're up for personnel.
Personnel did meet on September 10th. It was Dr. Suska, Marilyn, Nikki, Ann, and myself. We spoke at length about a lot of personnel issues that I can't share here, but we also did talk about one thing about absence, like attendance reporting, that sometimes isn't being done on time, and parents are getting phone calls that their kids are absent for the full day when they're not. They actually just didn't get it recorded in homeroom. But it can be kind of a concerning call when you get that at 11 a.m. that your child didn't show up to school. So we're looking into that, and we'll report on some updates next month. And that's really it, other than a long agenda. Let me bring that up. So we have an approval of leave of absences, A through D, acceptance of resignations, A through J, approval of 2 transfers. Ms. Cheney will be going from part-time ESL and part-time Spanish to full-time Spanish at the middle school, and also a kindergarten teacher moving to 1st grade. Approval of various board appointments, A through E, approval of extra compensation.
Excuse me, Jen, we're gonna
Yes.
strike 4B.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have those notes. We are striking 4B. Coming up at 9. Number 5, approval of extra compensation, A through J. 6, approval of cancellation of an additional instructional assignment for English, 10 ICR. Approval of a sidebar agreement. Approval of extra duty position rates. Looks to be for sporting events, scorekeeper, security, ticket takers, and announcer. And then number 9, approval of after-school program staff, although we are tabling sponsor at Irving and Bartle, which is Christina Suska, for next time. Number 10, approval of after-school program staff, extra hours. 11, approval of volunteers at the drama department and football at the high school. Number 12, approval of correction of rate for staff for the 9th grade orientation. 13, approval of staff for family engagement night. This is funded by Title III. Approval of staff for bilingual parent advisory committee puzzle night. Sounds really fun, also funded by Title III. Approval of staff for curriculum writing. We have first grade and pre-algebra. And approval of professional development presenters and presentation hours, funded by Title IIA and Title III. Long list of that funding. Number 17, approval of additional summer nursing hours. Approval of change of hours for the summer 24 nursing registration. Approval of after-school treatment team meetings. And that's it for personnel. Any questions?
No questions for Jen? Okay, then it comes back to me for policy. And we have a really long, everybody met this month, a lot of meetings. At least in the last week or two. So September 11th, we met as well as policy, and it was Dr. Suska, Monique, Allison, and myself. Highlight a couple of the policies that we talked about in committee, and then we have a long list of policies that are up for vote for first reading. So I want to kind of quickly go over those. So the one that's 8,500 open lunch guidelines, that was just being updated to reflect current practice. No change in high school open lunch. The policy did not reflect that sophomores also have open lunch. The policy said juniors and seniors, and in fact, sophomores also have open lunch. And our new high school principal noted the policy didn't match practice, so we're going to fix that. We're voting to fix that. So that is up for first read. We discussed policy 0167 about public comment. That is, we're going to actually take that off the list. We're not ready yet to bring that to vote. Discuss the pros and cons of accepting emails from the public to be read during public comment periods. And so we talked about that. We're looking for more feedback from the board on that one. Also talked about policy 2363, student use of privately owned technology, also not up for a vote yet, still in discussion phases. Dr. Suska has been gathering a lot of data over the past 3 years on the impact of technology on discipline reports. And she shared some of that with us at the committee level, and that obviously is going to go to central leadership team and probably other committees. And this is going to be an ongoing conversation about how students are being impacted by technology, classrooms, discipline, the whole package. It's not simple, but it's all up in these discussion stages. There's a few policies, 3160, 4160, and also the regulations, all related to physical examinations. That all refers to candidates for new positions in our district. We had options there that we were trying to think about. At this currently, any candidate for position here in Highland Park has to go through a physical exam through their own doctor, or they could use the districts. The policy had options for other type of examinations, including drugs, mental health. I think those are the two main ones. We discussed it, also checked with our lawyers, and our conclusion was there is no need for to require any additional exams for candidates for positions in the district. There has not been a concern in the past, the people that have been hired, and this would add one more hurdle and make it actually harder to hire, and also could get expensive. So the recommendation moving forward for first read is to keep the policy as it is now and what we require of our candidates. Service animals, everybody's been talking about that. The only change we put is that we may request documentation and no small horses. I'm sorry. We removed language related to small horses. That was going a bit too far. I think student suicide prevention, the language just matches threat assessment protocols and other things that have been added that we already talked about. So specifically on the agenda, we are asked to vote to abolish the policy for remote public meetings, which was during a declared emergency. That was our COVID policy. We are voting tonight to abolish that. Hopefully never, ever need it again. And our first read board member number and term just reinforces what we have now. You know, it's, and it goes over a bit. So it's same 9 members, 3 years, but it lays out a process for filling positions when people have to leave in the middle of their term. Curriculum content just related to how we adopt courses, making sure that it's tied to New Jersey student learning standards. We talked about physical exams. 511 is eligibility of resident, non-resident. That's our admission process or procedures for enrolling students. And what we do if a student is found ineligible to be in our schools because of residency or otherwise. An emergency and crisis. That was just plans to make certain just going down the list here. 8420 is kind of expanding or going into more detail on students with disabilities and how their needs are being met through our plans for security and crisis or emergency situations. Firearms and weapons, also that was more about identifying, matching it to code, matching it to the memorandum of agreement with law enforcement, lays out what to do if a firearm is brought to school or found on our premises. Open lunch, we went over. Volunteer athletic coaches also lays out a process for approving and recruiting volunteers, sort of gives it all to the superintendent to do or her designee. Requiring screening for TB, that they take mandatory trainings and possess a substitute teacher certificate if someone wants to volunteer in our district. And those are the policies that we're voting on tonight. Questions? Any?
No, I just want to comment that it is Guide Dog Awareness Month. So, you know, maybe
Okay.
that was kind of in the air,
Yeah,
these
you're
conversations.
saying that.
Yes. So shout out to all the guide dogs.
And service animals are important.
Clarification was miniature horses, not small horses.
All right, sorry, you're actually right. I want to go to the school that has them. I love that. Okay, we are moving on to our second round of public comments, second public comment session. And once again, we welcome public participation and reserve this time for your comments. So if anybody is still online listening to us and wants to comment, they should get an award. Is anybody that's raising their hand? Okay. So Kristen Springer, if you want to unmute yourself and state your address.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, 423 Dennison Street, in Highland Park, obviously. I am the one of the chairs of the Special Education Parents Advisory Group, CPAG, and I'm delighted to hear that you are doing a program evaluation. I just wanted to kind of make a couple of points and ask a clarification that CPAG really wants an audit or a program evaluation to think about what's working and what's not working or how to work best to best serve our students. And we are delighted and excited to work with you all, but we also understand from conversations with the administration that the program evaluation is due to the state stating the district is overclassifying students and that there's a need to cut students and to cut the classification. And that's clearly not what CPAG wants. We're not, we understand there needs to be a balance of best serving the students and working with the budget, but we're really concerned about the kind of the stated goal of cutting the classifications in half as the goal of a program evaluation. That certainly is not what CPAG would be advocating for. And also I've talked with you guys about this before, but CPAG has repeatedly offered, and we'd very much love to be involved from the beginning of the process in terms of kind of having the parental involvement, including helping review proposals and providing feedback from the beginning. For example, it would be interesting to discuss why we're choosing a law firm versus a special education consulting firm to do the program evaluation. I think it would really help transparency and buy-in and kind of the benefit of the program evaluation to have stakeholders intimately involved, not just providing questions, but intimately involved in the process from the beginning. Related to that, it would also be really useful to understand why there's no RFP Because the RFP, I think, also helps with transparency and trust if we can see what is being asked for from these law firms. Because otherwise, you know, there's the risk that it's going to seem like we're asking the law firms to just cut special education services in half, and the public can't see that. So I think it would really help with transparency and trust, you know, to have more of that information available. And again, CPAG is not just willing, but we're eager to help. We understand the financial balances and issues with it, and we're eager and really happy to help. But we, you know, as stakeholders would love to be involved in the process sooner rather than later. So thank you again for doing the evaluation, and we're excited to be available and helpful.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can I just say, because I made a mistake, I think, in leaving out that I believe a special education attorney group that you discussed as being, okay, I just want to clarify, because that was sort of my mistake in presenting those notes, that I did not specify special education attorney group or individual advocacy, yeah.
Thank you. One more, sure. What's that? I'm sorry. Oh, Abby Stern Cornell, if you want to just unmute yourself, give us your address.
Hi, Abby Stern Cardinal, Harper Street. I just have kind of a question about the wording in one of the policies that I was just trying to read through. For the service animal policy, it sounds like you're just cleaning a lot of things up. In number 6, though, or I guess it was under B6, I was just confused. It seemed like previously, the way I read it as kind of a layperson is that the student or family would provide information to the district. And the way it's written, again, as a layperson who's just trying to understand it, it kind of sounds like any school official at any time could ask. So, I mean, I'm sure this isn't the intention, but I kind of worry about, could this be taken as, you know, a child, a student with a service animal could be asked, is it one time and they provide documentation, or is it a school official can kind of at any point ask them to show documentation? So I just, again, not having the legal kind of background, this one just made me a little bit uncomfortable with the wording of how I was reading it. So I just wanted to mention that, to make sure that the student couldn't at any point, you know, on the off chance that there were somebody who kind of continued to question them, that wouldn't be permitted by the policy once they've provided their, you know, initial documentation.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Commenters? Krishna, do you want to speak again?
Sorry, yes, just a couple of points
Sure.
of clarification.
Okay.
So Monique, I think you did say, or at least I certainly understood, that it was a special education law firm. So I don't think that was on you. I just wanted to point out that there are other special education firms that focus more on kind of the educational component and not the legal component, and kind of focus more on what are the best services for children, more on the educational piece rather than the anti-litigation piece, or how it seems by hiring a law firm versus you know, someone that actually focuses on the kind of the educational piece of it. And then I would also like to know, I assume it's the case and I can Oprah it, but it would be useful for us to have the report that talks about the overclassification of students, and kind of who those students are and what your kind of areas are for trying to focus on the kind of reduction of classification. So I can reach out to one of you for that information. But that would be useful for the public.
Thank you. Anything else, Angela? Anybody else, Angela? No? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to voting on these, to do our board action items. So if you want to move curriculum and instruction, Sarah?
Yes. Okay, sorry, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is working. Okay. All right, so I'd like to move items 1 through 9.
Second.
Second.
Dr. Beatty?
I'm abstaining from number 6 and number 8. Yes, on everything else.
Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Bruce,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Okay,
So yes.
okay.
Okay.
We'll take his raised hand. Not to wake his family.
Ms. Daniel,
Yes.
Ms. Vardaman,
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees.
Yes.
And for finance and facilities, I move items 1 through 17.
Anyone second?
Oh, second.
Come
You all spaced out at the same time.
on, let's go, guys.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Bruce.
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Oh, God. Okay,
Yes.
personnel. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees.
Yes.
Are we done?
For-
Okay. Sorry. Personnel.
For personnel, I'd like to move items 1 through 19. Remember that we're striking number 4B and tabling number 9 for the sponsor for Irving Bartle.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Bruce,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman, Ms. Daniel,
Yes.
Ms. Vardaman,
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees.
Yes.
Okay, and for policy, I move number 2, which is the abolishment, and number 3, A through O, with the exception of B, we're tabling policy 0167. The others are all for first read.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Bruce,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman, Ms. Daniel,
Yes.
Ms. Vardaman,
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees.
Yes.
Okay, we move on. Thank you, everybody. Move on to board liaison reports. I know that Dr. Teska, you have one from the library?
I do. So Michelle Rodriguez sent me just a brief statement. The Highland Park Public Library's express location is closing so that staff can prepare for the transition back home on North Fifth Ave. The last day will be open is Tuesday, September 24th. The reopening date of the newly renovated library will be in October. No exact date is available but just yet, but the fact that they're closing up to move back is very promising and we're very excited.
Absolutely. Other reports? Nothing else? Okay. Then we move to president's report. I'm obviously not the president, but filling in for Allison. I do want to say thank you to the Globe program who gave us these lovely welcome back Board of Education and these great mugs with our names on them. So thank you. It made us all smile when we came in today. Thank you, Glow. I also want to, on behalf of the board, thank the administration, the faculty, our staff for all the planning and preparation it took for such a great opening to the school year. Wish all of our students a great year full of learning. Sounds like we're off to a good start. So I'm really happy about that. And we, as a board, we each year look at our Board of Education. We create goals, and our goals are exactly for that end, to what we can do to support the learning of the bottom line, the learning of our students in our community. So we are actually going to vote on the goals that we talked about last month. We talked about them a bit over the last month or two. And I believe Allison read the good bit of them last month, so I'm not going to do that again, but we're doing planning and student achievement, a goal in that area, a lot of specifics under that and what progress is going to look like. So I think that we're being held a little more accountable, holding ourselves a little more accountable by passing these goals under planning and student achievement and under communications and community relations, which obviously mirrors what the strategic plan is as well and how we can support that. So I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the 24-25 board goals as per the attached and as per what we've seen. So I move that. I see a second.
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 Do we do a roll call for that? please?
Yes,
Sure.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley.
Yes.
Ms. Bruce,
Yes.
Dr. Schulman, Ms. Daniel,
Yes.
Ms. Vardaman.
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees.
Yes.
Okay, any old business?
I did have, I know a little while ago, we were talking about different ways that we might think about engaging the public through town halls and advisory boards. And I was just, and I was just wondering if I'm not sure if maybe we can get an update that or on that and maybe personnel and communication, if what we might consider, I think it should be an active point of discussion and how we might continue to engage the public. So I'm just reflagging that as an area of interest.
Okay, Jen, is on your agenda for
Yeah, I was
next
gonna say,
week?
Christina, maybe we could add that to
I
the
got
next
notes, yep.
agenda. Yeah, that's great.
It's a good point.
Yeah. And sorry, if no one could hear me.
Any other old business? Remind us about? Okay, new business? I just want to compliment our sports teams. I've actually been following them and I made it to a soccer game. I'm planning on making it to a football game on Friday. But our teams are really winning and doing really well, right? Isn't it? We've won 3 football, am I right? Last 3 football games? Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, I went to the soccer game the other night. There are a lot of winning soccer games as well.
Yeah.
What was that? 3 in a row. It's awesome.
4-3.
Yeah, it's very great. It's really exciting. Yes.
A record. He came in with the
And I
stats.
And I've been seeing all those posts from the booster.
Yes, I was thinking that too. That's why it's in my mind. Yes.
Boosters' social media has been
It's so
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah,
job.
you really compliment
job
them.
at
Yeah.
Communicating to the
Really, really
community.
good. I feel like I know what's going on.
Yes, it's more motivating. Like, he keeps reminding me to get out there. It's on my calendar for Friday. I hope I make it. Any other new business?
Well, can I just emphasize, someone is,
I think I was gonna do the exact same thing.
oh, yeah,
Okay.
like
I
emphasize
just want to
this.
thank
Yeah.
the GLOW
Coverage
program.
From
Yes.
from the students. I have never received as a board member, a handmaid's card, anything from the children. So not to knock
It's
what is.
so
in them, but this
touching
is
and
just really
appreciated.
Yeah,
special.
very sweet. Yeah.
So again, I thank you so much, and I'm just gonna hold it up. I don't know, I guess they can see on Zoom. I just feel like, can we hold up our cards?
I got that.
This is really sweet.
Oh my God.
Thank you,
Yes,
thank you,
colorful.
thank
They're all
you.
different and unique.
Love it. And the mugs. Thank
And
you.
reusable mugs.
Yes.
Sustainability.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any other new business? If not, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.